Welcome back to Past the Pumpkin's Glow. Before we dive in, we notice a large portion of you are watching our videos and aren't subscribed. Let's go ahead and change that. When I was a kid, I had nightmares almost every night. They weren't the typical kind where you wake up, brush it off, and forget about it by breakfast. No, mine were vivid, grotesque, and terrifyingly real. The kind where you wake up drenched in sweat, your heart pounding in your chest, and you're not entirely sure if you're still asleep or back in the safety of your bed. Most nights, the terror followed me out of my dreams. The boogeyman that haunted me while I slept would somehow slip through the cracks and linger in my room when I woke up. I'd lie there, paralyzed, too terrified to scream, too terrified to even blink. There was always this heavy feeling on my chest, like something was pushing down on me, making it impossible to breathe, let alone move. I'd try to will myself to scream for my mom, but nothing ever came out. I'd just lay there helpless until the first rays of dawn would eventually make whatever it was disappear. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I needed something, anything, to protect me. One afternoon, my mom took me shopping on Germantown Avenue in Philadelphia. It was one of those places where all the stores are crowded together, each with its own jumble of trinkets and oddities. We passed by a little shop with a display case in the window, and that's when I saw it. A small silver cross with Jesus hanging from it. I don't know why, but it immediately called out to me. It wasn't fancy or anything, just simple, almost like it had been forgotten among all the other shiny things. But something about it felt powerful. "Mom, can you buy that for me?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. I could tell she thought I was having some sort of religious epiphany or something, because she smiled at me in that way that only moms can. She had no idea this was my last chance at fighting off whatever had been haunting me. That night, I put the cross around my neck. It felt cool against my skin, reassuring. For extra protection, I grabbed my grandmother's gold-lettered Bible from her room. It was old, the kind of book that had been passed down the through generations, and I figured it couldn't hurt to have it close. I lay in bed, the Bible resting on my chest and the cross dangling over it, feeling a little braver than usual. I thought I was ready for whatever the night had in store for me. I was wrong. The moment I fell asleep, it was like I was yanked out of my bed and thrown into an elevator that dropped at an impossible speed. The sensation was terrifying, my stomach lurching as if I were on a never-ending free fall. When the descent finally stopped, I hit the ground hard, landing in a dense black forest. It was so dark I couldn't see my own hands in front of me. I tried to get my bearings, but the silence was overwhelming, broken only by the sound of massive wings flapping somewhere in the distance. I started to run, every instinct in my body screaming at me to get away. But I could hear it getting closer, that heavy flapping growing louder and louder. And then, out of nowhere, came a voice. It was a whisper, soft but menacing, like it was coming from inside my own head. "Do you want to live, little boy?" I didn't answer. I just kept running, my heart racing. The wings were right on top of me now. I felt claws sink into my shoulders and yank me up into the air. I screamed, but no sound came out. Just as I was about to be pulled into the sky, everything went black. I woke up with a start, still in bed, but that wasn't a comfort. Whatever it was from my dream, it had followed me back. I felt its weight on my chest, a cold, dark presence looming over me. It wasn't just watching, it was feeding, drinking from my neck. I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. It felt like an eternity before it finally let go. And when it did, I must have passed out, because the next thing I remember is the morning light streaming through my window. I looked down at the cross around my neck. The right arm was bent straight out like it had been twisted by some unseen force. I tried to bend it back, but it snapped off in my hands. My grandmother's Bible lay beside me, its once gold letters now black and tarnished. And then I heard it again, that same whisper, cold and mocking. "See you tonight, kid." That's when I knew. No cross, no Bible, no prayer was going to save me. Whatever was haunting me wasn't just in my dreams anymore, it was here. And it wasn't leaving anytime soon. It was 2011, but for me it was like it was yesterday. Through various connections, I'd been introduced to a group in the paranormal community who held an event each year in a haunted opera house in a small hamlet in Ohio. I was fortunate to be asked to attend the 2011 Great Appalachian Spook Show, and gladly accepted. I stayed in a beautiful, haunted, and historical bed and breakfast. Unfortunately, I saw nor felt any activity there, and eagerly awaited the start of the event. However, I was treated to an extra special something before the event began. Being as I'd arrived early, the hosts of the event took me to the opera house and on a tour. I was elated. The Twin City Opera House is an amazing place, an elegant piece of architecture and a ghost lover's dream, nestled in a tiny, very tiny town called McConnellsville in a hilly area of Ohio. It was the perfect setting for something ghostly. I remember walking into the opera house and the feeling was strange, to say the least. Very active, very busy, the air itself was filled with energy. Walking into the theater itself, the feelings were almost engulfing. For a genuine empath like myself, it was all I could do to keep the walls up, to not be affected more than I already was. We walked hither and yon, and each place we stopped, I remarked about what I felt, to the point that the host's partner said, "Did you tell her anything?" My host shook his head and said, "No, I didn't tell her anything. She's doing this all on her own." There's a large and beautifully decayed ornate chandelier made of wood, lit by real candles, secured to a rope that a little boy, over 100 years ago, used to pull in, light the candles, and then send it back out. The feeling of that area was beyond creepy. I could feel the fear and foreboding of the little boy, as it was a dangerous job to have at the time. Then we went to the catwalk. There are 3 ghosts of note that haunt the opera house: a little girl named Elizabeth, an usher named Robert, and then the bully of the house, Charlie. It's Charlie I'll be talking about in a bit. He and I had a legendary fight, if you will, right in the middle of the ghost tour. In accordance with placating the ghosts of the opera house, there are gifts for Robert and Elizabeth. Robert is often left a bottle of his favorite red wine. There's a small tea set, a table, and a doll specifically for Elizabeth. They are hers and hers alone, and are not to be touched or moved. I made the mistake of seeing her doll upside down in its seat and setting her upright. I was immediately informed, with feelings, and made to understand that she did not like me touching her doll. I apologized and set the doll back. When upside down, we went on. When we got to the other side of the catwalk, I immediately felt hostile eyes on me. I mean, get out type of eyes feeling. I looked up and said, "We're being watched. I am not welcome here." I was informed that those feelings were being put out by Charlie, who is extremely evil. I smirked and informed Charlie that he and I would catch up later. You see, I can't stress that enough. And no zero, nada, nunca, zip fear of ghosts. I descend from country witches, and the paranormal is as normal in my family as picnics and sleepovers are for your typical family. I grew up with ghosts, and they have, since my abilities first showed themselves, been at the core of who I am. So the day of the event, Saturday, arrived, and I had a grand time. I investigated the sub-basement and discovered some creepy remnants of an old school, possibly as what I found looked like thick pieces of charcoal pencils. Though, regrettably, the infamous black mass never showed up for me. I was on edge, bristled, and prepared the entire time in the sub-basement, as I was very angrily and with serious hostility informed I was not welcome, and I'd better leave. Of course I didn't. I dragged anyone who would take me up on my offer of going down there with me. None stayed. I loved it down there, bristling and walls up the entire time. It was amazing. During the event, I met fans, met fellow paranormal investigators, answered a lot of questions, had an hour-long panel, and had the time of my life. The videos of my panel are on my YouTube channel if anyone is interested, as is the media clip, as I was the only guest speaker interviewed by the local television station. It was quite an honor. Keep reading for what showed up on photos taken during the event. That Saturday after the day concluded and many of us attended the eagerly awaited ghost tour. Where did we go? To Charlie's catwalk. I felt something as I was up there, not sure what, but I knew we weren't alone and I was not welcome. It was a feeling by then I'd become accustomed to. The host of my tour, there were 2 tours running simultaneously, had his meter out to try to contact Elizabeth and Robert, praying Charlie wouldn't show up. He began asking questions and asked Robert if he was there. He was. He asked if Elizabeth was there. She wasn't. She communicated that she was afraid and did not like me. Not sure why I assured her she had nothing to fear from me, but she made it clear she didn't like me. The host kept asking questions and eventually got around to asking if we were safe. The answer was iffy, as if Robert was having difficulty pinpointing his answer. Here's why. The host began asking if any one of us were in danger. When he got to me, the meter went into crazy strobe answering, and Robert communicated that Charlie was with us, did not like me. I was in danger, and I'd better not leave the group, or something bad would happen to me. I don't take threats well and started in on him, daring him to throw me over the catwalk, taunting him and threatening him in return. He knew he couldn't do anything to me, so he attacked one of the women in the group, making her fall so ill that she, terrified and sick and in almost complete darkness, made her way down the back stairs and back to the theater. The host was ashen and concluded the tour as quickly as possible. I continued to taunt Charlie and informed him that if I were ever invited back to the Great Appalachian Spook Show, I expected him to return for round 2, where I'd spiritually kick his evil butt again. I felt nothing for the rest of the event, as it seems, according to more messages received via the host's communicator, that I'd made Charlie furious by making him look bad. All the ghosts hated me because I dared to stand up to him. They didn't have the courage to do so, and now their lives were going to be absolute hell because of me and what I'd done to him. Remember the photos I mentioned earlier? When I got home and developed the photos on my computer, by developed I mean transferred to, etc. During my hour-long Q&A panel, I was surrounded by orbs. Not flecks of dust or questionable things that could be conceived as orbs. I'm talking serious, solid orbs all around me. I knew I wasn't alone on that stage, but I had no idea just how surrounded I was. Unfortunately, that was the only year of the Great Appalachian Spook Show, but I'm always eager to join Ghost Hunt's guest at a convention. Hopefully one day again. But one thing is for sure. I'll never forget what an awesome adventure the Great Appalachian Spook Show was, and one of the jewels in my crown. By the way, I'd still like to have round 2 with Charlie one day. 3 years ago, I was hanging out in my backyard with my girlfriend at the time, Tyshawn, Christina, Cece, and Money. Cece had brought a friend along, and we were all bored, just passing the time smoking and drinking. The night felt still, like it was holding its breath, and there was this heavy, quiet tension in the air that none of us really noticed until later. Cece's friend, someone we barely knew, got the bright idea to do a seance. At first, we laughed it off, thinking it was just a stupid way to kill time, but the idea stuck. We set a single candle in the center of the table, flicked a lighter, and watched as the flame came to life, casting long, flickering shadows around us. There was something eerie about that candlelight, how it didn't quite reach the edges of the yard, how it made everything look stretched and distorted. We didn't even get past the first few words before the candle suddenly went out. No wind, no reason, just darkness. We shrugged it off, joked about the cheap candle, and relit it. We hadn't even settled back into our seats when the candle didn't just go out. It flew off the table, landing several feet away in the grass. That should have been enough to call it quits, but we were all in too deep, pretending not to be scared, laughing off what we didn't want to believe was happening. Then I brought up the feeling that we were being watched. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the way the hairs on the back of my neck had been standing up since we lit the candle. Or maybe it was just the uneasy feeling in my gut. I turned around expecting nothing but the dark fence and empty yard, but instead, I felt something there, just out of sight. We all glanced around, scanning the yard and the shadows. That's when Tyshawn pointed it out. 2 figures standing near the edge of the fence, barely visible. They were kids, pale and stiff, with clothes that looked outdated like something from a black and white movie. But the worst part? Their eyes. They were completely black, like ink had swallowed up any trace of white. They were just standing there, not moving, not blinking, just staring at us with those empty, hollow eyes. Panic set in fast. We bolted for the house, slamming the door shut and locking it tight. The vibe in the room was frantic. Everyone was talking over each other, trying to make sense of what we'd just seen. But there was nothing logical to grasp onto. We were stuck inside, trying to calm our racing hearts while those black-eyed kids stood somewhere outside in the dark. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. Then, out of nowhere, 2 loud, heavy thuds hit the front door. They sounded like fists, or maybe something harder, like wood slamming into wood. We froze, too scared to move, or even breathe. Tyshawn tried to look through the peephole, but the porch light was out. Everything was pitch black. The knocking didn't come again, but we could feel it. Whatever was outside wasn't gone. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When the first light broke, we cautiously stepped outside, looking for any sign of the kids or anyone who might have been around. But there was nothing. No footprints, no signs of disturbance, just the eerie quiet of early morning. I crossed the street to my neighbor's house, hoping his security camera might have caught something, anything that could make sense of what happened. He agreed to check the footage with me, rewinding the camera back to the night before. We watched together in silence at the black and white screen flickering through our chaotic night. But when it got to the part where we all looked toward the fence, there was nothing there. No kids, no figures, just the empty yard. It was like the night had swallowed up whatever we'd seen, leaving nothing behind but that gnawing, unsettling feeling that we'd been touched by something that didn't belong in our world. Even now I can't shake it, the sight of those empty black eyes staring at us from the darkness. It's something that sticks with you, creeping in when you least expect it, making you question what's real and what's lurking just beyond the light. Thanks for watching. This is Past the Pumpkin's Glow. Tune in next week for more stories.